This is Charlie Flowe World Sports Show. I'm here with Tom Sermanni, head coach of U.S. Women's National Team. I want to welcome you to the U.S.
It's good to be here.
So I guess you've gotten a lot of fan mail and a lot of welcomes already.
I've met a lot of people. I've had a lot of interviews. The mail's been okay because I think it's probably gone to Chicago and I'm based in LA, so it's been quite quiet in that front at the moment. But I've been made really welcome here, and I've enjoyed my stay so far.
So you've got a lot of games coming up. You got, ironically, 2 friendlies up against Scotland. I mean, that must be a little bit of emotional going into that.
Yeah, it'll be very different. It's strange when you come up and play against the country that you were born in and brought up in. So it will be an interesting experience.
And after these 2 friendlies, you'll go over to Portugal and play in the Algarve Cup over there. Now, what are some expectations of the team going into that? Is it more the results or trying to get a lot of players involved?
I think it's a balance of both. I think at international level results are always important because you don't play that many games. And when you're a team like the US, you are judged on the results whether you like it or not. So that's important, but it's also important to get the balance right now between looking at the present and looking at 2015, because that's what we're planning for now. So to do that, you then have to give players opportunities and have a look at the squad. Obviously the regulars, etc., but there's some fringe players here that I think will be around in 2015, and if we can give them some experience now, that will be invaluable.
Now, how do you work with? You've got a lot of new coming players in. You got some vets that maybe retired by 2015. They're right on the edge. So how do you integrate a lot of the new young players into your system? Well,
you just create an environment where everybody comes in and is prepared to focus on the training, prepared to mix in, where it's important that the veteran players welcome these players in, but also set the standard for them to say, well, if you want to get in here and get my spot, this is what you're going to have to do. So that competitive environment is also important. But just generally, that's down to your working on the soccer field and sort of creating an environment where everybody works effectively together.
Yeah, and you've got your new camp, you've got new players coming in, some players that may not have had a lot of looks last coaching staff. Now it gives them an opportunity to come in, impress you, and find themselves in the 18.
Yeah, definitely, and that's happened this week. I think when the squad's announced for tomorrow's games, you'll find that in the squad of 18 there are some younger players perhaps who perhaps haven't had a cap yet. So that we're already looking at that sort of integration, if you like. But change comes gradually, and ultimately players are picked in performance. So I haven't come into this job with any preconceived ideas that certain players won't be around in 2015 and certain players will. That'll be a process that will look after itself as we go along.
Yeah, and even the value probably from the 18 that may not get to play, but just being in camp and being on the 18 is probably moving in the right direction for those players too.
Definitely, we've got some young players who've just actually been here and experienced this environment and been in amongst these great players and seen what the level is like. You can't buy that kind of experience. So that sort of stuff is really valuable, and what that does as well, it gives those young players an extra incentive, and also it gives young players who are not necessarily young players, other players who are not in this camp, it also gives them an incentive that if they go out and perform well in the NWSL or whatever, then they'll know that there's an opportunity for them to come into a national team camp.
And what's some of your main goals going into tomorrow? What's your game plan? What are you trying to do tomorrow?
I'm still at the stage of really, evaluating and assessing. So you don't go in there with a whole new, you throw in a whole lot of changes in there. It takes time to kind of influence a team in a sense. But this is a very experienced, a very established team. So there's not an awful lot for me to actually try and do or fix up, or hopefully not to try and break anything. Yeah. I think that's the key. So the team itself kind of knows what it's doing. So it's just to keep it on that track, and then introduce stuff that things that I might start to see, little things how I might want the team to play. Just start to introduce them as we go along.
Yeah, because they're a top-ranked team in the world. It's just a lot of us keeping them there.
Yeah.
Making your tweaks and keeping them where they are.
Exactly. Keep them where they are and try to continually improve how we play soccer.
Now, you were an outsider. You came in. You spent a lot of time in Australia. You spent time in Scotland. Now, how was U.S. women's soccer viewed before you came here? Like, just like a model of women's soccer around the world?
The national team is around the world. The big thing, and I've come straight from the Australian team, and Australians and Americans have got a pretty similar mindset. Very positive kind of athletes. They want to win things. They're confident. They kind of hard working.
Not a competitive nature already there.
Big time. So they've got that similarity. But even Australian players, in a sense, always feel intimidated by the US players because they've got such. This team's got such a presence about it, that it makes it. That's what makes it the #1 team in the world. Not just that, but that's one of the things, and kind of makes it the envy of the world. I mean, even our Australian players would say they just can't believe the number of times US win games when they're out of games at times. They look, every other team would be gone, bang in the back end there, and they win, and then they keep winning. So that kind of thing is admired around the world from all the teams, and is a hugely intimidating factor.
Yeah, I mean, it was something you had to deal with when you coached against the same US team when you were coaching for Australia. Just keep your players' mindset there, not eliminate the intimidation factor. Now you got to use it towards your advantage. And how do you keep that edge?
Well, I think the players keep it. I think there's such. Again, that's not something that I need to come and instill in a team. Often you get a team where you actually have to bring that competitive edge to it because it's been a team that's either been losing or there's problems in amongst the team. It's the opposite here. The key thing for me is not to stuff it up.
Yeah.
The key thing is to actually, hopefully, keep that on board, and that shouldn't be that difficult because it's the athlete. It's not me that brings that to the table. The athletes have already brought that to the table.
Yeah.
You see it in training, you see it in their attitude, you see it in how they carry themselves. So that's already there. So the key thing for me is to make sure that I continue to maintain that and hopefully don't break what's not being fixed.
What's some of your involvement going to be in the youth development, in the US?
Well, in a sense, the April's the technical director, Jill Ellis, so two great coaches there running that. My involvement will be to be there and to actually, if there's a camp around, like there was the under-17s last week.
Yeah.
So I was down there watching the sessions and hanging about and basically just looking at the players and the teams. So it's not an involvement in the sense that I've got some say over.
Sometimes your presence, just being there, the players see that and know that you're there.
I think that's important. I think the national coach, particularly in the female game, I think it's important that players know that you're there and that part of the system is as critical, more critical even than the bit that I'm doing, because that's the next stage.
Well, your next World Cup and your next Olympics, those are the players that could be half the team right there.
Exactly, and it's good to be around them. You never know, you go there and you see a young player that you think is ready to step up, and that's the thing that you're always looking to do. I wouldn't hesitate if I go to an under-20s camp and see a player that just suddenly catches my eye and bring them into a senior camp.
Yeah, and obviously you'll have your eye on the new league this year too for getting players through. That'll help do some evaluation because a lot of real play time under the belt.
That will be important for players. We started a little league in Australia about 6 years ago, and that's been invaluable because what it does is it gives players opportunities. It gives players, either young players sort of coming out from college, a chance to be seen, but it also gives players who perhaps have been out in the national team structure for a while a chance to play against national team players week in and week out and get themselves re-established in the national team. Because I know if you don't have a national league, it's very difficult to give opportunities to some fringe players because you can only bring so many players together.
Yeah, that seems to be a problem a lot with the different leagues where you've got a roster made up of players all over the world and you try to get them together in this camp and they can come from 15 different locations.
Yeah, that's a problem, and that's going to be an ongoing problem in the women's game. In the past it hasn't been such a problem in the women's game because mostly female players tend to play in the country that they're from. But we're beginning to, the women's game for me mirrors the men, it kind of follows the men's game. And I think we're seeing now that it's become a global game. So having the league in America is really critically important because what that will do is it will bring the majority of players back to playing here where we can see them week in and week out.
I want to thank you for your time, Tom, and wish you the best of luck against Scotland. You know, it'll be a little interesting looking across, seeing your country's flag.
Will be. It'll be one game where I'll know both answers. Rare occurrence, so I'll just need to make sure I walk to the right bench.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time, Tom.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it. Thank you.